This is Matthew, host of the Superhero Ethics Podcast, and I've got an ethical question for you. If I'm trying to help you not listen to ads, is it ethical for me to do an ad to help you do that? If you go to our website, theethicalpanda.com, and just click on the join button, for $5 a month, $55 a year, you get to hear all of our episodes without ads. Was I ethical in doing this? Let me know.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Superhero Ethics. Friends, I've been really excited to talk to Mandy and possibly some other people about the topic of rom-coms. I thought for a while that I wanted to plan it in advance, possibly talk to some other people about bringing them in. And then, of course, just a few days ago, we had the tragic news of the murder of Michele and Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner, as many of you know, was a wonderful actor and director and producer of films, including a lot of some of the seminal works of rom-coms and romances, and ones that are from a time of my childhood, but still have a lot of influence on us today. And Mandy and I had been talking about recording today. We were originally going to record on Christmas movies, but we were both kind of really touched and struck by the tragic loss of Rob Reiner, but also, therefore, the reminder to kind of celebrate his incredible life, his incredible body of work, and kept thinking about how the influence he had on rom-coms. So we're going to take a few minutes today just to talk about the man himself, and then have our episode on rom-coms based around two of the movies he made that really influenced, one directly rom-coms, and the other the idea of, I would say, comedic romance through the venue of action-adventure fantasy. And those two movies obviously being When Harry Met Sally and The Princess Bride. But before we jump into those things, by the way, you can hear I have a little bit of a cold. If you jump over to my podcast, The Once and Future Parent, that Mandy Kaplan is often on as well. That Mandy Kaplan is one of the co-hosts of. I'll be talking there about how I now have my first childcare cold, but we'll put that aside for the moment. Mandy, it is so good to have you here once again on Superhero Ethics.
Hello, Matthew. Thank you for having me back.
My pleasure, my pleasure. And for those who didn't hear your first episode, give us a quick 30-second introduction to yourself.
I am a mom, a performer, a writer, a musical theater lover, and a podcaster. And my podcast is called Make Me a Nerd, because one thing I have never been is interested in sci-fi, fantasy, nerd culture. And now I'm trying all of it. One movie, book, video game at a time. So I'm on that journey on my podcast, Make Me a Nerd. And I also get the pleasure of talking to you about parenting.
Yeah, it's been really great having you on those podcasts. I've gotten to be a guest on Mandy's podcast, Make Me a Nerd, which I really recommend. They've done some incredible episodes. And today let's talk about Rob Reiner and rom-coms. And first, it's an emotional topic. We're not going to go too deep on it. A lot of other people have had a lot of wonderful things to say. But just for a moment, for you as someone who loves media and these stories, talk a bit about Rob Reiner and what he meant to you and what his work meant to you.
I mean, my husband and I believe we are Harry and Sally. We were friends for many, many years who couldn't get our act together and actually take the plunge for a long time. And when we did, everyone said to us, "You're just like Harry and Sally." Princess Bride is one of my all-time favorite movies. One that people don't talk about as much as they should is American President, which is so beautifully, passionately portrayed what hope and politics in America could be. And, that I credit Rob Reiner with inspiring with that film.
And if you like The West Wing, Aaron Sorkin made that movie as a way to convince people that The West Wing as a TV show could work. And Rob Reiner did an incredible job of bringing Aaron Sorkin's ideas to life. And I think Sorkin and many others accurately, have credited Reiner with allowing, basically like bringing forth what became West Wing through that incredible movie.
Yeah.
Which is also, by the way, a great romance, among other things.
Stunning. And Rob Reiner, beyond his work, which was unmatched, I think of every movie you think of, A Few Good Men, North. I'm kidding about North. But, you think of these movies and you get emotional and excited and inspired, but he was also one of the good guys, a true mensch by every account. He, outside of the business, was a really good, socially aware, socially active fighter for justice. He just did a podcast about the assassination of JFK that I loved. I loved listening to Rob Reiner every week because I'm a conspiracy junkie. His handprint on our culture really is boundless, and it's a tremendous loss.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to mention two of his movies that had such an effect on me. One that is well known, another that is, I think, kind of forgotten a lot, but is really powerful for me. Even if it's not, I think, his best work. The one that is very well known and been quoted a lot is Stand By Me. I was the exact age for when that movie came out. It is just one of, I think, the preeminent movies about coming of age and being a preteen, about to be a teen, going through puberty, dealing with all that. And it's an adaptation of one of Stephen King's novellas called The Body. And King has said a couple of times that he thinks it's the best adaptation of his work and maybe one of the best adaptations of any written work to film. And it had such an effect on me. And if you're watching Stranger Things now, or have ever enjoyed Stranger Things, and you think about that idea of like the kids on bikes movies, Stand By Me is definitely one of them. Not necessarily the first, but one of the kind of defining ones of that generation that Stranger Things is leading back to. And then there's another movie that I don't think is one of Reiner's best. And I admit I haven't seen it since I saw it in theaters 30 years ago. But still, I remember it. I remember the effect on it. Did you ever see a movie called Bye Bye Love?
With Paul Reiser?
I believe so, yeah.
I believe I have. It's about divorced dad?
Yeah, it's about divorced dads. And it's it was just this sweet little movie about divorce and about trying to be parents in the midst of divorce. And on our parenting podcast, we talk about how, neither of the three of us have gone through that with our co-parent. We're all very lucky in that regard. But I think I certainly had that happen with my parents, and it was a big effect on me. And that movie, I think, had a real effect on me in terms of just the way it portrayed the struggles. And I think gave me some insight into, I was a teenager at the time. I am often very hard on my father. I think in many ways deservedly so, but in many ways probably not. And that movie, I think, was a very powerful reminder. And to me, the thing about it that was so striking was not just, I believe it's a Rob Reiner directed movie.
It's not. I'm so sorry, Matthew. No.
No, okay, thank you.
It looks like he has nothing to do with it.
Wait, isn't he the radio host in it?
Oh, maybe he was in it.
I'm pretty sure he was in it. Give me 1 second.
It says Dr. Townsend. He played Dr. Townsend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were asserting that he was the director.
No. Yeah, I thought he was. When we were like, and many people are going to wonder, why in the world am I bringing this up? Because he didn't direct it. He didn't write it. He's a star in it because he was an actor as well. And he's an actor who, many of us know him from All in the Family. His role's Meathead, which incredible stuff. But in it, he's playing a radio host who represents all the ideas of toxic masculinity and dumb dadness that the movie is kind of critiquing. And that's a thing about Rob Reiner's career that I haven't seen many people talk about, but I wanted to lift up, is that a lot of times, a lot of directors love to make themselves the hero. They love to write parts for themselves where the young ingenue finds them incredibly attractive, or where they're the ones to make the big breakthrough. A lot of times when Reiner wanted to make a point about a kind of thing that was problematic, he would either write himself as, or just would play in someone else's movie that problematic part. And so I really, that's something I associate with him and wanted just to lift up as one more great part of his career. Even if it's honestly not the best movie and probably has not aged very well.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in many, many years. And I'm a Paul Reiser junkie, so that's why I remembered he was in it.
Me too.
But I think also if you look at the outpouring of response over the past couple of days, think about how many careers he created. How many actors would not be where they are without him? And he seemed to always find the unusual, the exciting, the different. He could have put, really popular actors of the time into Princess Bride.
Yep.
But he chose Mandy Patinkin, Carrie Elwes, Robin Wright, who was unknown, and he made them who they are. I love his vision.
There's a lot of pro wrestlers who've become big in acting today. Some, I think, with more success than others, but I think John Cena is a great example, as well as the one who's in the MCU movies, whose name I'm now blanking on.
Dave Bautista.
But he put Andre the Giant into that movie, recognizing that he couldn't think of anyone else, and Andre the Giant was fantastic in it. And yeah, you're right. And I mentioned earlier Stand By Me. If you think of that like 80s brat pack of actors, a number of the male actors from that, both the Coreys, I think both the Coreys, at least one of them, but definitely River Phoenix has talked about how being cast in that really helped his career. Kevin Bacon had already had somewhat of a career, but being in A Few
Kevin
Good
Bacon
Men,
was not in that movie. I'm so sorry.
I'm saying Kevin Bacon was in A Few Good Men.
Oh,
I was just transitioning there. Sorry. No.
Oh, okay.
Kevin Bacon talked about how similarly A Few Good Men really helped launch his career, or at least kind of relaunch it. Yeah, he was a wonderful finder of talent, and he was very good at getting out of the way and letting other people kind of take the lead in those things.
Yeah, I think one of the things that made me realize his reach, and Princess Bride, I think, is a beloved book movie for just anyone with a heart. I think everybody loves it. I've never heard anybody say, meh, I wasn't into it.
Right.
But during the pandemic, there was a new streaming site called Quibi. Did you watch The Princess Bride on Quibi?
No, but I heard incredible things about it.
You can now watch it on YouTube all the way through, and I can't recommend it enough. So many dozens of actors from all over the world for whom Princess Bride was meaningful, dressed up in their homes and their backyards and recreated Princess Bride scene by scene.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
And Rob Reiner's in it, and it's really a beautiful tribute. All of these people who thought this movie deeply affected me, and now I get to live it for just 5 minutes in my backyard during the darkest time in our lifetime's history, right? Princess Bride was the thing that lifted millions of our spirits.
And I think that's really worth remembering. And we're going to talk more about that specific movie in just a minute, but I want to just kind of lift up that I think he was someone who, I'm going to make one point and kind of move past it quickly, but then get to one last question I want to ask you. He obviously was a person who had very liberal politics, very leftist politics, ones that I largely agree with. And, he's come in some attack from people on the right, including our own president. There's enough discussed about that online, but I think that both of us are probably pretty against all that. But he did a wonderful job of inserting those ideas into his movies without it ever becoming, I don't want to say preachy, because I think sometimes a preachy movie is good, but I think certainly he did a wonderful job of just sort of like, most of his movies weren't about politics, even The American President. It was much more about just like, not even social justice, but just being a mensch, being a good person. And like, you could easily apply that to like, oh, it's pretty easy to see who Rob thinks he is and isn't living up to this, and how that maps onto our politics. But he was able to kind of find the broader picture, find the broader discussion a lot of the time.
Yeah. I mean, American President, yes, it's a romance. I recognize that. But for me, the politics of that movie are so fascinating, and the intricacies of how you get your bill passed. And then as the movie progresses, there is an evil Republican trying to take down Michael Douglas's Andrew Shepard, and it's Richard Dreyfuss, uncredited, which I'll never understand. And he says his big thing is, I'm Bob Rumson and I'm running for president. And he's just insidious through the movie. And the movie ends with Michael Douglas saying, come for me, Bob. I'm Andrew Shepard and I am the president.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful. And that's Rob Reiner's heart on display in that moment. You know, I'm doing the right thing, and I will continue to do that. And I will continue to fight insidious creeps like you. And not Richard Dreyfuss, but his character.
It ties so well into the romance because for those who haven't seen the movie in a long time, by the way, if you watch it and go, oh, that line sounds exactly like what happens in West Wing. Yeah. Aaron Sorkin likes to repeat himself. But the plot line is that he is starting dating a woman, and the woman has a history with the ACLU, including at one point burning a flag when she was in college. And so it's this wonderful parallel story of both a person rising in defense of their partner in a way that needs to be like celebrated more, but without the toxicness, but also the political aspect of defend. You know, he talks about, yeah, I'm a card carrying member of the ACLU. Why aren't you? And gives this great speech about all that. The other thing I wanted to talk about, though, and I think When Harry Met Sally is the perfect example of this, but there's so many others. And you and I have talked a little about this. I want to raise it on here. In other episodes, I've talked a lot about baiting versus coding, and especially in terms of like queer baiting versus queer coding. And queer baiting is when you kind of like give hints that characters might be queer in some way or another, just enough to give people hope, but are always giving yourself cover. That no, it's not really like that, I promise you. Coding, though, is, you know what, we're telling you that they are, but never explicitly. So that, yes, the people who aren't going to get annoyed about that aren't going to get annoyed about it, but we're letting you know clearly this is what it is, and maybe it doesn't even have to be named. And there's whole debates about that, and sometimes it is really good to be very explicit about that, but sometimes coding is great. And I think Rob Reiner was one of the best at Jewish coding that I've ever seen.
Okay.
Because in part, I was thinking about When Harry Met Sally. Do you have any doubt in your mind that Harry is Jewish?
No.
Yeah. It's never said. There is nothing explicitly about it. But the character is incredibly Jewish to me. And I was talking with Mary, my partner, about this, and she was saying, yeah, before she met me, that probably wouldn't have occurred to her. But now, like, having met me and been with my Jewish family and stuff like that, she definitely sees it. And I think about that in a lot of his other movies as just one more thing that he did of, like, you know, because Billy Crystal is a great example of that Borscht Belt comedy. Paul Reiser is another. Woody Allen and Mel Brooks are also part of it. Mel Brooks is great. Woody Allen, obviously, a lot of issues. But I think of Rob Reiner as having brought a lot of that into the mainstream and bringing us a lot of the Jewish romantic lead in mainstream movies in ways that we're never going to explicitly say it. Sometimes more recently did, but were very clearly coded in ways that those of us who were Jewish or partially Jewish could understand.
I never gave it a second thought.
Yeah. It was just so clear and so obvious.
Yeah. I mean, that was always my type. I actually, I love Paul Reiser so much that I referenced him in my wedding vows.
Oh, it's amazing.
Paul Buckman, the character from Mad About You. And so that type of character, your Harrys and your Paul Buckmans, that's my jam. So, but I never thought of it as, oh, yeah, they don't say that he's Jewish.
Yep. They don't need to.
Right.
Just like the woman in Ghostbusters, I forget the character's name, but who's very clearly a lesbian, but it's in the all-women Ghostbusters, but has never said that.
Oh,
Same
Kate
kind of
McKinnon's character?
Kate McKinnon's character, I think.
Yeah, I don't remember the name, but
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Tell me where you want to go. I'm all yours.
So
now that I've had a little cry.
No, totally understandable. Let's move into his work, and I pulled these two movies because I feel like they have had such an effect on romance and rom-coms, and one of them I think is very specifically, definitively a rom-com, When Harry Met Sally. Princess Bride is a romance and is incredibly funny, but I think is often sort of categorized as fantasy or action adventure, but I think is very much also influential on rom-coms. And so let me kind of back up a bit and say, for you, what does that term mean, rom-com? And how do you feel about it?
I think I went through a real phase of loving them, and then I burnt out because they became so formulaic, and something like When Harry Met Sally didn't feel formulaic.
Yeah.
So going back to Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, and I found out, side note, I'm sorry, I was named after Katharine Hepburn's character in Adam's Rib, or Desk Set. I think it was Adam's Rib. She was named Amanda. We talked about where our names came from,
Yeah.
and I said, I don't know. Well, my mom told me that was it. But you look at Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn, and that you are on the edge of your seat as if it's an action movie, because you're like, just kiss already, just get together. We need this. The will they, won't they tension is so much fun. And then when you see it year in and year out, that tension dissipates because we know they will. Right?
Right.
So When Harry Met Sally, on the one hand, disappointed me because I was a person who wanted to believe men and women can, in fact, be friends.
Yeah.
Platonic, loving, present friends. And I still get bugged by the idea that movie saying, no, they can't.
Right.
Right? Bruno Kirby was right. Sex is always entering the picture. That bugs me because I do believe that people, and it's not men and women, it's anyone who is attracted to anyone. You can be friends and not have sex with them or fall in love with them. That is perfectly legitimate. Then again, if you're going to take a premise like that, he did it in the best freaking way possible with Nora Ephron's script. It was just a perfect representation of maybe it is a good idea to take the leap and try romance.
Right. Well, and do you know the story about why the movie ends the way it does?
I feel like I do, but tell me.
Because originally the ending was going to be that they, for those who haven't seen the movie, I'm going to strongly recommend you hit pause and watch it. It is just a phenomenal movie in so many ways. In many ways, I also realized it's a love story to New York City in a way that I had forgotten. And I definitely drove my partner crazy being like, oh yeah, that scene is shot right here. And here's what because every scene in that movie, I have a personal history with.
Sure.
But for those who haven't seen it and don't want to watch it, they meet a number of times. They're never quite able to make a friendship work. And then they do make a friendship work for a long time. And I would actually push back on your thought on that a little bit. But even before we get to that, and then they're both dealing with the ends of relationships, and kind of that's how they're originally friends, is that they're like, neither one of us wants to date anyone. We just need to not be alone in our grief. And then she finds out that her ex is getting married when he had always told her that he didn't want to get married. You know, it's very
he just didn't want to marry me.
Exactly. It's such a relatable moment. He goes over to be with her. He's physically comforting her, but clearly not in a sexual way. She wants kind of affection. They wind up kissing in a way that I think is very understandable and probably has happened with, a lot of us. And it's not great, but it could have been portrayed as him taking advantage of her. It could have been portrayed as her taking advantage of him. I don't think it's done either way. It's kind of a mutual thing. They feel like it was a mistake. They both walk away from it. The sex definitely makes things weird between them. But then it ends with him making the kind of very now cliched, but this is one of the things that kind of made the cliche, running in out of the rain, dripping wet. I realize you're the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. He gives this incredible speech. She kisses him, and if you ever wonder kind of what's the origin of "you had me at hello," like his speech here and her response is what leads to that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Originally, though, they were going to go back to being friends. They were going to realize that the sex was a mistake and go back and have a friendship and prove that the adage is true. And then, on the set of the movie, Rob met Michele and fell hopelessly in love with her. And was so kind of overwhelmed by romance that he wound up convincing Nora Ephron, who, and I'm not going to get into the details of this at all because I don't know any more than just what's in the press, but like she had gone through a very public, very ugly divorce that had been cataloged in the movie Heartburn in a really powerful way, and he convinced her to rewrite it as having this happy ending. So I think that the point of I agree that it's muddied by that a lot. But I thought the point of the movie isn't that the adage is wrong. It's that, yes, they can become friends and would have been okay being friends. But also, once they're friends, they actually realize that there is a mutual attraction and love between them, and that's okay too.
Well, that's what happened for my husband and me. So who am I I'm living proof.
Right?
That we couldn't be friends. We had to get married and have a family.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I think there's some element to the idea of the you can't I wish there was more stuff about that. We're starting to see more and more men and women having platonic friendships because I think it absolutely is possible.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it more and more often. But, this is a fantastic movie. It's also from the 80s. There's a lot of ways which it hasn't aged the best.
Right. And I don't know Rob Reiner's influence over the music, but that soundtrack also changed the world with Harry Connick writing all the soundtrack for When Harry Met Sally, and it just launched his career as well.
Yep. And it features also an actress who people on this podcast will know very, very well, but have very rarely seen without looking like she has two pastries strapped to her head, Carrie Fisher, the actress who played...
Married. Interesting.
The actress who played Princess Leia, and who's doing a fantabulous job here. But so back to this. So for you, what place in all this does When Harry Met Sally hold now as someone who's been both in love with and critical of the rom-com?
It's the gold standard.
Yeah.
It really is. But it takes out some of that cheese that so many that movies I enjoy. I'll focus on Sandra Bullock. I love her. I adore her rom-coms, but they're very cheesy and polished and predictable. And this felt more relatable and real and heartfelt than a Hollywood movie. Maybe because it was New York, maybe the way he shot it, maybe just the charm of Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal. And the dialogue was so sharp. I can't say enough about it. It's just better than other rom-coms.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it does so many things so well. And rewatching it, I think one of the parts of it that really struck for me was, I think a lot of times there's a sense of why didn't these people get together back then? And watching it, I'm not struck by that, because I think kind of the point is they were idiots most of their lives. Him especially. He's an asshole when she first meets him. Mm-hmm. He is I've just graduated college. I have a dark side. I've figured it all out. I'm sexually liberated. And if you don't want to sleep with me, you're not. And if you're happy about the world, you're not as aware as I am.
Right.
Which I say very critically, because that was exactly me at 21. Hopefully not the sexual part, but certainly the rest of it. And she is, I think, in a much more forgivable way, but still kind of very stuck in her ways and very much has a very rigid way of looking at the world. And then they both kind of need to go through this heartbreak, and then they both need to grow through that. And I think one of the things the movie captures so well is this idea of not they should have gotten together back then, but that they both needed to grow into people that they could fall for each other.
Absolutely. That's, I'm sorry to keep personalizing it, but our journey was similar. And people would say, well, what took you so long? And it's like, well, because I would have dated Jeremy for 3 months and then I would have sabotaged it and been done with him. And then who knows if we could have remained friends, because that's what I was doing back then, and we needed to evolve into who we needed to be for each other. And we did. And so did Harry and Sally. Yeah.
And so what kind of effect do you think it's had on, I think there's a lot of bad things, I think, in terms of how a lot of things have tried to, cliche it or, turn it into tropes that they don't do as well. But either positively or negatively, how do you, when you look at this movie and rom-coms today, how do you feel it having an effect?
I mean, in filmmaking, I think having all of those, quote, real couples who were not real couples, and, they cut away many times in the movie just to hear a charming story of how two older people met and that they've been together this long. I look at that and I think, would The Office have ever existed? Where you cut away and you go to an interview of a character. It was different. It was exciting. It kept it so heartfelt. Yeah. And it gave you this hope for love and the future in such a grander scope than Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson, jumping on each other and kissing at the end of a movie I very much enjoy. But when you add the element of all of these couples in their 70s and 80s who have been together 50 years, that just makes it's like it's ready for anyone. It's there. Yeah. We can all have this. Yeah, I'm not sure if that answered your question, but that's what my mind jumped to.
No, I think it makes sense. It's such a great framing device. And I think that really was and I think that's a thing that others have tried to copy, both some successfully, some not so. I think the two factors that most come to me when I think of rom-coms today that I think the ones that I like do this well and others don't. One is that I don't think, and tell me if you think I'm wrong, I don't think either Billy Crystal or Meg Ryan is the star of this. That they're pretty much co-stars. Would you agree with that?
Yes, it's a 50-50.
I feel like a lot of the movies today are told entirely from, there's basically our hero And then there's the person that they are either trying to get or trying to get away from. Like there's definitely we have our point of view character, and then we have the romantic other character.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that often feels really problematic in terms of it framing it very much as, first of all, you're not framing that other person just as a romantic option instead of like their whole interiority and all that kind of stuff. But also just the way what it sets up of in terms of like romance as the hunt and the chase and all this kind of thing. I think there's something really powerful about it not being either of their stories, but us getting to see both of them so much.
Right. I can't reference anything from Adam's Rib or Dusk Set or those classic romantic comedies or It Happened One Night, but those all felt equal in my memory. Right. You were getting to know each of their foibles and their wants. And in one way, it is, I guess, powerful that with the rise of female bankable box office stars, we got a lot more of the, Sandra Bullock, Kate Hudson, Julia Roberts, people who we wanted to follow them.
Right.
And that was allowed for the first time. And I think maybe now we're course correcting back to a more equal thing. But it was, My Best Friend's Wedding and all of these movies that were about a crazy lady trying to find love.
Right. And that's fair. And I probably should adjust. So I think that's a fair kind of critique of that, because you're right. I think there's a need for that. And that's an important thing. And having that has been so important. But I think you're right. That's now we're seeing a little more of the correction of like, how do we do that and still have some of them be very much the woman centered, and that's great, but still have, from whatever gender the person they're seeking after is, or being pursued by, whatever it is, some of that person's interiority as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the other thing that brings me to something I think this movie does so well that I think a lot of other rom-coms don't. Well, I guess maybe this isn't true. No, actually, as I say that, I realize I don't think this is actually accurate. I was going to say something about how both of them have this wonderful, sorry, you hear me thinking out loud. I was going to edit this, but I'm not going to. I think one of the things I love is that both of them have their other friends who they turn to and go to as reflecting boards. And I think a lot of times maybe that's because I was going to say that and say many other movies don't have that, but of course, no, they do. The best friend part is always a really important part of a rom-com. But I think often we don't see if it is focused on one person, the other person doesn't have the best friend they're reflecting against. And I love that this movie has both, along with the hilarious, but probably people have been through this before, all too real situation of those two meeting and all of a sudden they get together.
Yeah.
And I will say a quick personal aside. There's a scene in this movie where, Harry and Sally have their two best friends, played by Carrie Fisher and you mentioned
Bruno Kirby.
Bruno Kirby, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
They try to set each other up with them, and instead those two fall for each other. And so now them as a couple are getting together. And then there's a moment when Harry and Sally finally sleep together. He gets really freaked out. She gets nervous about it. He feels like he has to be awkward and leave. She recognizes the awkwardness and feels abandoned. And they each call their best friend, who are at that moment in bed with each other because they're now a couple.
Mm-hmm.
Mary and I got together in part because each of us were good friends with other people who were friends with each other. We were kind of part of a circle of friends who hadn't really connected much. We did connect. But each of us was good friends with someone else in that circle who were also having their own romantic drama. And our second date was spent cuddling and watching a movie and doing, getting to know each other things, while each of us were getting texts from our respective friend about the problems that the two of them were having on their date. And so just that scene really hit hard for us personally.
Yes. Yeah. Carrie Fisher says, "Promise me I'll never have to be out there again."
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if you had because I hadn't seen the movie in a while, I had a moment watching this of, oh God, does that mean that she and Bruno Kirby are going to break up? Because actually I think a lot of times in movies today they do. And I think there's been kind of a cynicism in a lot of rom-coms, and it feels like there are these two really parallel worlds. If you have to either be the completely saccharine rom-com which can be wonderful, but also, as you said, can become sort of over the top or become so cynical where nothing can ever work out.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that Harry and Sally feels pretty solidly in the middle. Like, Harry starts out as this very cynical person, and I don't think he's ever fully proven wrong. He is proven wrong in some ways, but it's not like he has to decide, oh no, everything is happy and rainbows. He just, they find a middle ground.
Yep. They grow up as friends. You know?
Now, last thing I want to just say about this and then turn to Princess Bride. Today, I think, while there's still lots and lots of awful stuff in society about women's sexuality, women expressing their sexual needs and desires as part of the rom-com is now, I think, becoming more part of the formula often a lot. And at times, in Bridesmaids was a great movie. And in part, people were sort of like, wow, this is a level of realness about women talking about sex that hadn't happened often. When Harry Met Sally, this was made in the 80s when that was not really a thing. And one of the most famous scenes in it is when they as friends are talking about, he's convinced that no partner of his has ever faked an orgasm and she's not believing it. And he's like, no, I could always tell. And so she decides, this person who's been introduced originally as kind of a very uptight, like
Buttoned
not
up
PDA person, fakes an orgasm right in the middle of a diner. And famously, one of the best lines said by a character, was only one line in the movie, an older woman looks over her and says, I'll have what she's having.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the importance of that scene in terms of like all the stupid ideas people in society have about women's sexuality and stuff like that. If you want to talk in general or just talk about what it meant to you or however you want to answer that question.
Well, I just think it went there. It wasn't implied. Like you talked about coding.
Yeah.
This was just actually going there in a way that is not realistic. I don't think a lot of people in real life would fake a very loud orgasm in Katz's Deli. Mm-hmm. But it went there to show her to show her evolution, and now he's the one who's embarrassed. And I just I do love that it showed that they can talk about sex, and the scene starts with them coding a lot, and it's all implied. And he's like, "What are you saying that women fake?" Or and they're trying not to say it, and then they just say it, which probably opened the door for lots of actresses to be free, funny, sexual on film and really go for it rather than this implied stuff.
Yeah, because at first, and he's the one who's willing to say it. She's being very cagey. She's very couching her language. And he's the one who says, are you saying that they fake orgasms?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think that's a real power that she's the one who's willing to be like, because I think there's often a real, like with any gender, but especially obviously this is very gender laden, but like, when you realize that someone is trying to embarrass you, if you actually are the one who's not embarrassed by it and can turn that around, it's a great tool, of like ending the like, yeah, I don't care if you talk to me about this, this thing doesn't embarrass me.
Right.
And her, like you said, shutting him down, proving him wrong, but also like he liked needling her. He liked being a bit of a jerk and kind of poking at the fact that he was more comfortable about this in public than she was. And I think it's a great way of putting him in his place.
Yeah.
I'm guessing he doesn't make fun of her about this in public again because she kind of wins,
Yeah, it's empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any last things you want to say about this movie and rom-coms?
I don't know that there will be a better one. It is, for my money, the best one. And I don't think it would have been as good in someone else's hands.
Yeah.
It needed Rob Reiner's humanity and willingness to go there.
Yeah.
It's a perfect movie.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And I think the fact that, like, all of the characters in this movie get to have their humanity. As I said, it's to me, there's something really kind of random and weird when I don't even know the name of the actress who says that one line, I'll have what she's having.
That's Rob Reiner's mother.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. That's an even more dimension to it. And Carl Reiner, Rob's father, by the way, was a big Hollywood person as well. And yeah, was she an actress in her own right, or was that just kind of her? Yeah. It's such an iconic line. And I think if you can put her in a picture of her in a meme today and everyone will know what that means. So just kind of a cool movie thing. Speaking of Carl Reiner and his son, Rob, as I understand it, the story goes that many, many years ago, Carl Reiner read a book that he really loved, and that, among other things, was about a father reading to his son, and gave a copy of it to his son Rob, and Rob said loved it so much that he wanted to make a movie out of it, and that was The Princess Bride. Which again, like if you're going very technical about terms, is maybe not a romance, not a rom-com, but is I think both one of the most romantic and one of the most comedic movies that's ever been made, and certainly iconic in both of those genres, as well as kind of reinventing the idea that the action adventure movie can be a medium for romance and comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about that. First, what was your introduction to the movie? Had you read the book first? Did you know about it?
I had not read the book. I saw the movie in the theater I think it came out 87.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. And I loved it so deeply. And then I didn't read the book until my son was about 9 or 10, and we loved the movie and we read the book together. The book is trickier and darker, and there are plots that Rob Reiner very wisely left out and took a lighter tone that I appreciate. And being that kind of kid, as I said about my podcast, I did not see adventure fantasy movies as a kid. Yeah. I mean, I saw Star Wars. I'm not,
Right.
I'm a human being, but I didn't, if it had a bunch of swashbuckling or creatures, or it didn't exist in the real world, I resisted it. I think I went to see it because Robin Wright was on the soap opera I loved, Santa Barbara, shout out.
Oh, that's
And
hilarious.
I thought, oh my God, now she's in a movie. I have to go see Kelly Capwell in this movie. And I couldn't have loved it more. It couldn't have been more influential in my life I'm a writer as well, and everything. Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, anytime you start a quote from that movie, anyone around you can finish it. Yeah. And I've seen it dozens of times.
And I love that that's your story with it, because I'm the exact opposite. And I had this kind of very, I can't imagine there's people listening to this who haven't seen this movie at least once in their lives. But if they haven't, please, for the love of God, hit pause, go watch this movie. But the central framing device of the movie and of the book is that in the book, a father, in the movie, a grandfather, is their son is sick, a young boy, like 8 or 10 or so, and they are reading this book to their son or grandson. And the book has a whole other thing about like that his father had read it to him, but that actually the book is this like much longer history of the war between Florin and Gilder, and his father had just told him the good parts. And so this is like it's this whole meta thing that William Goldstein loved to do, of a book within a book within a book. Putting all that aside, when I was a kid, I was able to walk to school, lived in New York City, and me and a couple of other kids who went to our school all lived close to each other. And so when we were still pretty young, like first grade, second grade, third grade, the fathers all kind of organized that once a week, they would rotate 4 of them through the month. One of the fathers would walk all 4 of us to school every day. And so we had about a 15-minute walk each day, and we had to do something. And my father decided to tell all of us the story of A Princess Bride.
Oh.
And this was before the movie came out. Mm-hmm. Like early 80s. And so it's a very kind of like meta connection to the movie. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of was nervous about seeing the movie because like, my father loved this book so much. I now loved the story. And I think it was one of the reasons why I think a lot of times I'm really hopeful and don't have the cynicism a lot of people have, though I have some of it certainly, when a favorite book gets turned into a movie, is because of how well this was done. Mm-hmm. And yes, I loved some of those hard parts of the story that you probably didn't, because I was 8 years old, and a longer description of the gruesome tortures that the Count puts Wesley through, really my 8-year-old heart loved. And I was bummed they weren't in the movie. But I totally think you're right. They had no place in this movie. Mm-hmm. But I just loved it. And I think it to me, it's one of those examples of how differently we can watch things at different ages. Mm-hmm. Because at 8 years old, I didn't understand why girls loved this movie so much. I thought it was just a great swashbuckling movie.
Right. Yeah.
And then I got to high school, and all of a sudden, like all the girls I knew were talking about how this was their great romantic movie and Wesley was so attractive. And I was like, what? I thought it was just a fun movie about like killing lizards in a fire swamp and things like that. And then I rewatched it, understanding what romance was, and was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me that it works on all of those different levels.
It does. And yes, it's swashbuckling, but Inigo Montoya's journey is an everyman journey. Revenge is such a powerful thing that is for girls, boys, and everyone in between. It's not a male thing.
Yeah.
You know, and you
so.
are just rooting for him to find the six-fingered man and kill him. And the humor didn't feel like boy humor. Inconceivable. Like all of it felt like it was made for every person with a pulse to enjoy and laugh at and get swept up in.
Yeah.
It's a perfect movie.
I think that's so true. I think there's so much of it that is just so, and every time I hear someone want to remake it, I'm like, God, no, do not touch it. Because
Except this Quibi thing, I will say that.
okay, sure. But that's recreating, I think, rather than trying to do a remake.
Yeah.
Because among other things, and granted, I have a podcast that's all about questioning the ethical decisions of things. And I've talked an awful lot about revenge on this podcast and whether revenge is a good thing. And if someone ever asks me to talk about, is Inigo Montoya doing the ethical thing by killing Count Rugen once he's kind of defenseless and beaten, I'm going to throw him off the podcast. I don't want to think about that. And the movie does a great job of saying, of putting you in a position where, like, yes, Humperdinck gets to live and the Count gets to die. And is that, do we want to get into the ethics of that? No. And maybe I'm going to get angry emails about that. Who knows? But I feel like the movie does such a good job of letting you get swept up in, this is a fantasy. This is a story outside of our own world. It's made up countries, even though they keep referring to real countries. You know, I found you in Greenland and things like that. And I think that's, there's such an irreverence in the movie that I think speaks so well to, like for me, let me put it to you as a question. As someone who didn't like fantasy and stories about, like, you know, magic and wizards and sorcerers and stuff like that, what made this feel different?
Well, I think Goldman did it. I'm not giving Rob Reiner the credit. You couch it in this kid who has a cold, who just, you know, I mean, every line Fred Savage delivers. Is this a kissing book? Like all of it is so relatable. And therefore you realize that this story is a device to bond in the movie, this grandfather and this son, and to distract this little boy from having a bad cold and being sad. Yeah. So that there's a magic in that because it is grounded in realism. Right. And the humor is just unmatched. I mean, you take these things that normally the screaming eels, just for an example, right? Right. As the person I am, I would be like, oh, they're inventing a creature and there's going to be a creature attack in the water. And then they immediately cut away to the grandfather saying, you look a little nervous. You okay? You know, and the kid's like, oh, yeah. And then he starts with the eels shrieking shrieking eels. And he's like, Grandpa, you read that part already. All of that has kept it in the real for me in such a great way. Yeah.
I think that really does a great job of it. And also kind of, again, points to the romance being the heart of it. And also, there's so many, it's about these nations of Florin and Gilder and this sounding like this very made-up world with brute squads and torture devices and things like, well, I mean, that's very real, but you know what I mean. But then they keep throwing in these real life references in ways that I think also help to, like, remind you, this is fun, this is silly. You know, he talks about, like, finding Fezzik. Do you want me to leave you alone, friendless, hopeless, in Greenland? And he says it as though it's like, you know, the other side of the moon. But of course, it's a real place in our world. And, you know, another great line of Azzini is that the great blunders of the world, and the one he's referencing is to never go against a Sicilian when death is on the line. But he says the first one is never get involved in a land war in Asia.
Right.
He's making that in the mid-'80s. Everyone knows he's talking about Vietnam. Everyone knows he's talking about, like, all this mass morass of problems that have happened of people getting involved in land wars there. But it doesn't make it about that. It just kind of is a nice kind of poke of this is being written by someone who's writing an epic romance, but is also having fun and is twisting the screws a little bit. I think one thing that is, we talked about how Harry Met Sally like really walks that perfect line of cloying and cynical so well. It's very easy for a movie to say, we are going to take ourselves seriously as a medieval romance.
Mm-hmm.
It's also very easy for a movie to say, we're going to make a modern day parody, and we're constantly winking at the audience and constantly making, modern day references. This movie perfectly walks the line between those two.
Right. No, there's real action, real stakes, real peril. And then there's chocolate makes it go down easier.
Yeah.
I
love a good
also
LLT.
ridiculous.
The mutton is, it's their version of the BLT, and that's like, it's like a Muppet thing almost, in terms of that kind of references.
Yep. Now, gun to your head, terrible thing to say, but which of these would you choose as the ultimate film?
Whew.
Right?
I think it depends on what you're trying to do with the movie. And here, in terms of if I'm going to just sit back and watch one, I think at an earlier point in my life, I would have said Princess Bride.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I'm going to say When Harry Met Sally, but I think that's for a couple of very personal reasons. One, I'm in a much better romantic place than I was at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Two, I really miss New York. And I think When Harry Met Sally hits me like that because of that. Mm-hmm. But in terms of to go back to the topic of this podcast, the romance element, I think it really depends on the audience. I think if because I was kind of joking there, but serious about how as an 8-year-old boy, I didn't get the romance of it. And I think I was very much in the Fred Savage part of, I don't care about all the kissing. Give me the sword fighting again.
Right.
And honestly, I think I look forward to watching it with my son one day because I think there's an understandable part to that 8-year-old idea. I think there's also an awful lot of misogyny in it. Not that I was blaming myself as an 8-year-old, but in terms of what we teach 8-year-old boys. And I think there's a really powerful lesson in this movie of because the fact that by the end, his grandfather's like, oh, it's just kissing now. I'll skip this part. And Fred's like, no, it's okay.
That's okay.
Because he's come to see that can be pretty great too,
Right.
So I think it's hard for me to say which one's better. I think Princess Bride probably has had it's a grander movie and has had a bigger influence on things.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I'm watching a movie with a kid, it's going to be Princess Bride. If I'm watching something with an adult, it's going to be When Harry Met Sally.
Mm-hmm.
What about for yourself?
You didn't answer the question. I just want to point that out.
You gave me a binary and I found a non-binary answer. That's my whole existence.
Okay. I think
gun to my head, I'm going to say When Harry Met Sally because it's not based on someone else's work. And in that regard, I'll give just as much credit to Nora Ephron as I will to Rob Reiner. Nora Ephron being, we could do a whole thing on her in rom-coms and probably should at some point because so many of the other rom-coms that you think about, Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail, all written by her. But in terms of Reiner stuff, I think I'm going to give it to When Harry Met Sally. But by a very slim nose.
There's no incorrect answer. These are both extraordinary movies.
Yeah.
But I think Princess Bride is a perfect movie. And I think When Harry Met Sally is a perfect rom-com. So it's it's a limited scope, right?
That's a good distinction,
you're saying Princess Bride is the best adventure, the best romance, the best comedy, the best fantasy. It encapsulates everything.
Yeah. I mean, there was a great post that I saw about how one of the things that Reiner did was to really define so many of the movie genres that we think of even 30 years later, 40 years later. If you think about a courtroom drama and the lawyer trying to get the lawyer trying to get the person who's under oath to admit the thing they want to admit, what's the first thing that's going to come to a lot of people's minds? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. That's from A Few Good Men. If you think about a coming-of-age movie about kids who are not quite at puberty yet, going through that and being forced to face a truth of adulthood that they don't think they're ready for yet, but they have to face. Stand By Me. If you think about rom-com, defining it, Harry Met Sally, there's so,
Yeah.
the action adventure you're right, it's for all of them. It's not just a boys movie of swords and there's a girl to win as a prize. Even though I will say Buttercup gets almost no characterization whatsoever.
We haven't even talked about Spinal Tap. That's another thing that he mastered. What you're
He kind of invented a lot of them, he defined the new version of the genre. The mockumentary.
And did it better than everybody, right?
Yeah.
He did whatever he did. He made the best rom-com, the best family romance action thing, the best mockumentary. He's a master.
There was a great moment last night. I've been watching a lot of his. I basically spent all of yesterday watching his movies. I started with the ones we were going to talk about, but then wanted to watch a bunch of others, and kind of closed the night watching Closed the night watching This Is Spinal Tap, which I admit I'd never seen before.
Really?
And my spouse was kind of in and out, paying half attention to it. She was doing some things, work-wise and stuff like that. And I'll admit, I think it was obviously a phenomenal movie at the time. I don't think it's aged that well. I was having a little trouble getting engaged by it, but I'm glad so many people love it so much. But I did enjoy a lot of it. And she was barely paying attention. But there's a moment when, forgive me for giving away one of the most iconic lines in movie history to a movie that's 40 years old, but spoilers, I guess. He's showing off to Rob Reiner, who's the interviewer in this mockumentary, his phenomenal speaker and how great it is and the things it can do that no other speaker can do. And all of a sudden, Mary shouts out, "Oh, is this the one that can go to 11?" Because that's the joke, is that he's so proud it can go to 11. It's just more than any other speaker.
Right.
And Rob Reiner's character says, "Well, why not just call it 10 and make 10 louder?" Then he's like, no. But
this one goes to 11.
To 11.
Right.
So the point is the guy's an idiot. Mary knew that. And I looked at her like, "Oh, have you seen this movie before?" She goes, "No, I've never seen it before." But she just knew that line so well because it is such a meme today.
Right.
And I thought that was just such a great example of like just how far reaching Reiner's effects have been.
Yeah. And shout out to Misery, one of the greatest
Yep.
two-hand or, what I don't know even what you call it, a thriller, a suspense, but
yeah. And kind of really launching Kathy Bates's career in a really great way.
In film, yeah.
In film, yeah. She'd done a lot of other great stuff before then. And also being another phenomenal adaptation of a novel.
Yep. Stephen King.
Yep. Yeah. Any other kind of last things? We've been about an hour, and I also feel like there's so much to say about Reiner himself. We've barely scratched the surface of like kind of the ethical questions and all, the effect he had on rom-coms. But for Princess Bride specifically, what do you think of the romance of it? Because here's a movie where we just talked about the interiority. Princess Buttercup, we get almost nothing about her, and we don't know much about Wesley either. Like, why did they fall? In Harry Met Sally, we get 4 different meet cutes. We get so much about who they are, what it is. These two, it is literally nothing. It's just,
well, I do think
he
that's
loved
a
her
nod,
and she loved him.
Right. That's a nod to the time they were this timeless, I can't name the actual era, but true love never dies.
Yeah.
Death cannot stop true love. It can only delay it for a while.
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to believe that?
Yeah.
So it's that the message is that love conquers all, and that is timeless and perfect, and I'd like to believe that. So that's why this movie resonates, why the romance resonates.
And to me, I think that's why pairing it with When Harry Met Sally and knowing that the same guy directed both is so important. Because Harry Met Sally is all about understanding these two people and why they couldn't fall in love at this point in time, but why they do at this point for all these complicated reasons. And here's this other movie that says, these are two beautiful people who live together, and guess what? They're in love. And nothing else matters. We don't need to have any understanding of that because it's about love being challenged and love conquering all. And I think both of those messages are great. And I think it's a problem when movies are just about love conquers all and there's nothing else to discuss. We don't talk about the problems that come up. And I think it's a problem when we kind of forget that there's something magical and wonderful about romance and love. And I just love holding these two in tension for that reason.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you, Mandy, so much.
Thank you.
Tell us more about where people can find you. What are you doing on Make Me a Nerd these days?
MakeMeANerd.com. I've got lots of great stuff happening. And then coming up in the new year, I'm going to do Hunger Games, both the book and the movie, because why not really deep dive into something that was such a cultural phenomenon. And I'm doing a movie that I saw when it came out and I didn't like it, and everybody's nerdy about it, The Big Lebowski.
Oh, interesting.
So not maybe nerd culture, but I'm branching out into what are these things that people are so passionate and nerdy about that I've just missed out on. So I'm going to watch it with fresh eyes and see if I can't get nerdy about the Coen brothers, who in general are not my taste.
I mean, it's interesting because I think you could walk into any Comic-Con anywhere in the world and make a reference to Big Lebowski, and 80-90% of the people would get it.
Of course.
It's definitely, it's right. It's not nerdy technically, but it definitely is in that realm. So, yeah. That's
all coming up in early 2026.
All right. It's called Make Me a Nerd. It's findable on any of your podcast devices. Definitely go check it out. Check out Once and Future Parent, the podcast that Mandy and I are on. Of course, I do this podcast, Superhero Ethics. I also do Star Wars Universe. I also do Star Wars Generations podcast, which we have a lot of fun on. Please check out all these great podcasts. If you are in Southern California at some point and happen to think to yourself, you'd love to see a vaudeville type variety show while also helping a good cause, that's kind of a specific niche, but Mandy, do you have any ideas for that person?
Vaudeville. It's a cabaret called Miscast, Right Singer, Wrong Song. You can find it at Miscast LA on Instagram. And we do it every 3 months. All new singers, all new songs, all hilarious, all for my favorite charity, Project Angel Food.
Awesome. And where can people find that? It's MISCAST.
At Miscast LA, yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mandy. Love having you on every time. Thank you,
Matthew.
Let us know what you think. All the feedback information in the show notes.